Hello, and welcome to a special spooky edition of the Read Write Twitch stream book club. I am Sam, your spooky vampire Dracula for this evening, and with me today is my co-host Brendan,
aka Freddy,
aka creepy as fuck,
and Erica Cotten.
Hey.
So,
okay.
I can prepare.
I'm super square.
I'm not laughing at all. I swear.
This thing glows in the dark too.
It's good, yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, so you can't see, but because I'm cut off kind of, but you can tell I'm a Dracula because I'm well dressed and have a lot of bags under my eyes.
I agree. You definitely look Dracula-ish.
Yeah, so yeah, welcome everyone. It's another episode. We're doing the first bit of Moby Dick today. Not Moby or Dick, but both together.
Yeah. Sam. Okay. Sorry.
Calm. All right, and so I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where we should start. Other than like maybe we should talk about what we expected this book to be.
Okay. Yeah. I'm down for that for sure.
Yeah.
Because I certainly thought it was going to be much drier than it is.
I actually thought it was going to be more interesting than it is. Which is maybe my own fault. This thing is in the way. Okay, I'm moving that. I was really into this book for like the first 16 chapters, and then I got so done.
Did you get to the no, you didn't get to the cetology one, because that's their chapter 32.
Dude, I read it all. I read all the third.
No, I mean like until the point that you got annoyed was before that, because that's where I almost put it down.
I actually really liked that chapter, though it was really odd. No, so I was good up until they got on the ship, and then I was done. I was like, this is so boring now.
That's kind of interesting, since for those of you, I already like let Brendan and Sam know that I only got to the end of chapter 21 because life sort of happened. You don't want to hear my excuses because everyone's got one and they all stink. But I got to the part obviously when they got on the ship, because you said it was like 16, 17 or so, yeah. And I thought I'm like super into it.
Yeah.
So now I'm like terrified that it's gonna suck.
So here's the thing. Is all the parts up until they get on the ship are all super character driven, really interesting observations about like life and like what people are like. And then when they get on the ship, it just becomes this weird philosophical mess that I just don't care about.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see why you would not like that. Yeah. Erica, did you have like a particular expectation though? Like, was there some preconception?
I think that I absolutely agree with you that I think that it was going to be drier. I think that I was expecting, because I've read like hands down my least favorite author of all time is Dickens, because I try to read him and I want to vomit because it's just all like words for no sake whatsoever. And I feel like I'm such a purposeful person that I was like, I can't listen to you talk for an entire page about this guy putting on socks. Like I'm not okay with that. So I was really expecting the same deal from Melville, and I wasn't. I did start to catch onto like discussions of philosophy, and by the time that I hit the area that I stopped at, or got to, because they were talking about, I always say his name wrong, Queequeg, because I really enjoyed there was like a passage. Oh, I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, but and either way, yeah, I thought it was gonna be drier. I thought it was really I assumed it was gonna be very, I don't know, make love to the water type of thing, which it kind of was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like, I go to the seas because A, B, and whatever. But I found it not that way at all. I mean, a bit, but not so much that it was like just a guy talking about water. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like I won't.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say that very like the first passage where he's talking about the thing that draws everyone to the sea, and there's like literally lineups of people just staring at the ocean. was like that. I kind of didn't I didn't expect, where it's like a little bit more poetic than just like, you know, Dickens, who's paid by the word, so he just, you know, puked stuff on the page.
There's definitely a really, really nice flow to the way that Melville writes. Like, he has a very clear style, and it fits, and like it's very poetic, it's very versy, except when it gets into too much Shakespeare style and gets boring again. Which again is one of those things of like, why was there that random play in the middle of the book?
Oh, yeah, and I mean, this is a big theme of the book, is it's got like a gajillion metaphors kind of piled up on top of each other.
I started to
So
get.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
Well, it just jumps styles
go
a lot,
ahead.
right? Because like the setology chapter was like an academic treatise, and like they just had like some lot of style jumps in the middle of it, which was interesting at times, but wasn't so interesting at others.
I definitely saw a comment online that described the book as like having a plot at the beginning and end, and then the middle is just like a series of nautical essays, and that's we've kind of entered that zone.
I could see that.
Interesting.
Like, I mean, the cetology chapter, and then like the whole thing about crow's nests later on, and the talk, like all the really detailed description of what each individual crewman did on the ship, felt like that. Yeah. So, but you're right. Like, it's weird that it jumps to that more academic style kind of in the middle, or like back and forth, at least in the middle beginning.
Yeah. I thought that chapter was kind of interesting.
I don't know.
Only because it feels so weirdly out of date now, but it was kind of interesting to see what they knew about whales at the time he was writing it, right? Like, it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting, but this is what we've learned nowadays, and like that sort of like how far have we come sort of aspect, which was nice.
I took a note for that chapter specifically, and it was this.
I'm a fish.
I don't know if you-
Fish.
because
Whale
whatever,
science.
man. Scientists can say that they breathe air and they have got the fin the wrong way, but they're dang fish as far as this guy's concerned.
Yeah.
That was my full takeaway of that chapter. I didn't feel it contributed like anything to the book whatsoever.
Yeah, it didn't really, I don't think, other than to be like, oh, hey, Melville did a shit ton of research when he was writing this book.
Yeah, maybe. Or at least he wanted to present it like the character knew a lot about that, whether it was true or not.
Yeah. So yeah, the couple of things I did want to point out in that chapter, just to briefly for the trivia nerds out there. One, they'd never seen a blue whale, though they had heard of them. So the biggest whale that they had ever seen was the sperm whale. Two, killer whales are separate from Grampus, but really they're both orcas, so they're the same type of whale, and have two separate categories for them. I had to look it up because I was like, what's a Grampus whale? And it's like, that's a historically common term for the orca. And I was like, but he has a chapter on killer whales, which are the same thing. That's so weird.
Weird, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's really strange. And then his whole thing about porpoises being basically whales, and they're kind of the same, but they're different. And then dolphins and all that jazz, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I thought that whole thing was a great example of like a super 19th century ism of like desperately trying to categorize things even if you don't really understand how they operate, because you gotta, and that's actually another theme of the book, is trying to pull the unknown into the known and kind of make it mundane and taxonomical.
Right. And
certainly like
that's what Stittsville is saying as well, where like Melville didn't feel like people understood the economics of whaling and how important it was. Which I like that sort of aspect of it, where he explains what whaling is in different places and like sort of what it is.
Yeah, well, and there was some quote, and I don't know where I wrote it down, but there was a great quote about how he's describing the importance of whaling to the economy early on, and then he makes a big point of saying, well, all the kings in Europe are anointed, or like monarchs are anointed with whale oil, so we're pretty great.
Yeah,
just gotta really underscore that shit real hard.
So the one thing I did kind of want to mention with regards to this book is how many times he references Canada, which I was like, yes. But also in kind of reference to that, how much whaling was an important part of the Canadian economic history after the fur trade, basically, right? And how East Coast Canada was very much defined by the whaling trade. I remember, I don't think it exists anymore. I was just looking on their website today, but at the Canadian Museum of History in Ottawa, they had a whaling exhibit for the longest time. Which I think has been changed now because they have a new Canada gallery all set up. But I remember how important it was and how like they spent like a lot of time kind of expanding on that inside that museum. So yeah,
is that in like the main gallery?
Yeah. It was part of the History of Canada tour.
Oh shit! Okay, that'd be amazing because it'd be huge.
Yeah. They had like a full size, like they had basically like a cross section of a whaling ship with like different stations.
Oh wow!
It was really cool. I think they've since changed that gallery recently in the last couple of years. I think that exhibit is probably still in part there, but I don't know exactly what it looks like nowadays.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't been to this museum, this particular like gallery is, I don't know, like 5 or 6 stories tall and probably 100 meters long.
Yeah.
And
what's a meter?
One like whole, it's like 3, it's like a yard, 3 feet.
I'm kidding. Go ahead. Sorry.
And it's one huge room. And at one point they had like they'll build almost a whole town in there, or an entire ship or something.
They built,
and there's a whole wall.
Yeah. They built an entire ship and a whole town. And a steamship and a bunch of other stuff in there. Like it was very legit, full
scale, and you can just like, well, not quite walk up into it, but that's kind of the idea, is that you could, if it were, that you couldn't, if you wouldn't destroy it. So that was actually, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's like 2 more expectations that I think that I had for this that were different than I thought, which was like, one, that I thought it was going to feel more fantastical than it was. Like it felt realer than I expected it to be. I don't know why it, like I didn't assume it to be like historical fiction or something of that sort. I don't know. I think that's what would classify it as, maybe. But
so I have the opposite opinion, but for a totally different reason. But I agree with you in that like it's very methodical and realistic in its portrayal. A lot of the media interpretations that we've heard of Moby Dick tend to make it out to be this big epic, and maybe it will get to that point when we start getting deeper into the book. But like at this point, it's very much a like slow building thing. It's not like Ahab standing in the lightning, like trying to kill a whale, right? Like it's
not quite up to the blood and thunder that I was told I was going to be there.
Yeah, and I think what held that to me as I was reading the bit that I got to do was like the fact that I did like put it in Massachusetts, and I was like, we're in Massachusetts. This is okay. I'm in America. All right. I just for some reason was picturing like some sort of like Mordor, but not Mordor. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, a made up city. I was picturing that, and then moving it down to Nantucket, down in South Africa. So I was like, I don't know. That's what the thing that I realized was the biggest difference.
Whoa, hold on. Where do you believe Nantucket is?
I don't know. I don't know where it is.
That is also in America.
Is it? No, it's not. What? What?
It's very much. It was like the capital of whaling in the entire world, and certainly in the United States.
It's actually right beside Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
That's in Massachusetts too. Okay.
Yeah.
They said something about Cape Town though. I thought
Cape Cod.
Cape Cod. I misheard it.
Cape Cod, and they also go around the Cape Horn, but you haven't been there
Cape
yet.
Horn. No, there's a part. They said Cape Horn as well.
Yeah, but like when they were
Horn
talking.
Is the very.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's the very bottom part of South America.
Okay, I knew it was elsewhere. I knew we were not. I knew we were not in America when they said Cape. I heard Cape Horn, but I thought
Yeah,
they
well,
said Cape Town in South.
So
South
that's
Africa.
actually something that's kind of interesting because they're not really that far away, like in terms of the actual length of voyage that they're taking.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're going from the east coast of the United States all the way down around South America because there's no Panama Canal for another 100 years, and then out into the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
So like and it's kind of crazy, at least these days, to think about just getting on a boat and like hauling ass across most of the world for 3 years or so. So I don't know. I felt like he kind of casually enters into this huge thing that we would today think of as like kind of life shattering.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, okay, so here's going to be my weird analogy of the day. I've been to Martha's Vineyard more than once. So like my family, we went there a bunch of times when I was in high school as kind of like for a couple week stays with family from Europe. So it's like a 10-hour drive ish, 8 to 10, something like that. I don't know the exact number, but it's close. I flew to LA in 7 hours last week, which is literally the other side and basically pretty close to where they were going. Like, so like I can.
Yeah. So you're right.
You know what I mean? Like you can
There's a shrinking
that.
of the world. But actually, that's something that was happening in this book is because these ships were so much faster and more efficient than they used to be. Like the Pacific Ocean was an achievable place. Instead of it taking 10 years to get there, it took you maybe a year and a half, maybe only a year, and then you kind of cruised around for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and
so it's actually interesting that you would mention that, like that that you can travel somewhere really fast. They considered this pretty quick.
And that was one of the other things that I like. It was very well established that like Canada was a place, that Japan was a place, that China was a place, that India, like they're distinct and different. It's not like we're going to the Orient sort of thing. Like it was like there are all these places, and we know what they are, and we know what they're kind of like. We know what Polynesia is. We know what New Zealand is, and Australia, and all that jazz, right? So.
Well, that was a big point that I thought was interesting was when he mentioned, I took a note somewhere, but that they explored, that it was the whalers who had really explored the Pacific, not anyone else. Like they were the real frontiersmen.
Yeah, his whole like, yeah, you remember that book you thought was really, really cool and badass? Yeah, we don't even bother recording that because it's so mundane for us at this point. Like, it's like, oh, damn, bro, sorry. Cool story, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, we're making contact with people who've never even seen a boat before. And I thought it was particularly... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with Cecil that his observation, Melville's observation of those places wasn't very different from today. I agree. It felt very modern in that aspect.
Yeah, I was intrigued with just a small thing.
I was going to say, with the particular exception of Japan.
Yes. Yeah, well, he like used the word Japanese, which I didn't expect him to do because I felt like it was like further where I expected someone to say Oriental. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was waiting, Stitzel. I was totally going to get into that because I have.
We're definitely going to get into that. I definitely wanted to talk about that as well. So.
Yeah. So the very first chapter, or like first couple chapters. The scene that I never expected, the trains, planes, and automobiles bed scene in this book.
It's so good.
Yeah, so who wants to...
You go, Brendan.
Who wants to explain it?
Okay, so basically what happens is Ishmael goes to this inn and is like, hey, I need a bed. And the innkeeper is like, well, I'm full up, but you know what? If you don't mind sharing a bed, there's this harpooner who can totally hook you up. And Ishmael's like, well, I guess it'll be fine, like whatever.
Yeah, he was kind of pissed, but he's like, all right, I guess it's fine.
Yeah, he's like, I've never really had to share a bed, and it's kind of meh, but I'll do it because whatever. I don't really got a choice. So he's waiting for this harpooner to show up, and he doesn't, and he starts getting mad, and he's like, screw that guy, I'm gonna sleep on a bench. So the innkeeper like gets out his carpenter's plane and like planes down the bench. He's like, oh, I can't do this. And like the other bench was 4 inches too high, so he couldn't even make a real bed. So he's like, fine, I'm gonna go up there. And he gets into bed, And then the other guy shows up, and it turns out that he's this cannibalistic Polynesian harpooner who
well, he doesn't know he's a cannibal yet.
Not yet. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, he sees
no, actually he did. Yeah. Didn't the innkeeper say that he was out selling heads?
Yeah, he was out selling heads.
Oh, that's the assumption that he made. Yeah. He was selling heads,
yeah. He was, because the whole reason why Queequeg was I can never
Queequeg.
The whole reason why he wasn't there was because he was trying to sell his last head from New Zealand, so that he'd have some money. And he didn't want to sell it on Sunday because that's the Lord's Day, and that would be like a big affront. So Saturday night he's out selling heads. And he shows up late, and like he undresses, and Ishmael's like, this guy's like bluish yellow, and like he's got all these black squares on him that look like he was like in a medical hospital. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, he's all covered, like 100% covered in tattoos.
Yeah, he's like head to toe tattoos. He's like, oh, wait, I remember this story. This one guy told me this one time was there's these people with tattoos, yada yada. So it's kind of a whole thing, and Queequeg jumps in the bed, and it's like, hey, wait, there's somebody here.
Yeah,
starts reaching out, and then like Ishmael just starts screaming bloody murder.
So this is another 19th centuryism. There's no lights, right? Like he's got one candle, so he can't tell there's someone in the bed.
Yeah, I put that together, but I didn't put that together just as visually as you let me, Sam. So then I just laughed again. I laughed when I read it too. I was like, this is fantastic.
Yes. So then this huge cannibal guy jumps into bed and like then jumps straight back out again because it's like, holy shit, what? There's someone in my bed.
Wait, no, he started. I got the impression that he
he was like reaching out
to cuddle with him. I thought.
Oh no, that happened a little later.
Oh, was it later? Okay.
No. Okay, so he was reaching out to see what was in his bed, and then Ishmael started screaming bloody murder. And as soon as he did that, the Queequeg jumped out and was like, had his tomahawk pipe that he was smoking out of in bed.
That pipe.
It was just like, I'm gonna kill you. And Ishmael was like yelling for the landlord.
Yeah, landlord. Yeah, I remember. I was because he uses the phrase like, I'm fearful as if he is the devil himself or something like that. I was like, he's just by like his silhouette, he was terrified, and like the weird deformations of his face. But like, I just don't. I can't imagine like being at a point where I've hated someone as if they were the devil, whatever the devil may be, So and then all of a sudden he's trying to like feel you up, and you're like, holy fucking shit, get off of me! Like so terrified.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a really funny scene. Honestly, it was good.
Yeah.
Well, and then it kind of just gets better because once they kind of calm down and start talking, they realize actually they're like very similar. They have very similar interests, and they end up smoking this sweet pipe in bed together, and then just kind of hanging out for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
And it kind of just turns into this chill thing.
But it's like super cuddly.
It's kind
of
mad cuddly.
Yeah, I was like, well, because he keeps later in the chapters. He keeps talking about how close him and Queequeg are, and I'm like, this is kind of adorable. Like, I approve. I ship Ishmael and Queequeg, Ishqueg, if you will.
Oh man, so that was #1 on my list of ship names. Again, so there is Ishqueg, or Quee-ish, or Quishmael, which I think is particularly good.
Quishmael is nice.
Quishmael is pretty good.
Yeah. Smoking in bed. Yeah, you know it did.
Well, the landlord told them off about smoking in bed too, because she was like, "I don't have insurance for that, so you can't do it."
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So they're like huge buddies immediately, and there's definitely, if you read it in like a modern context, you could see like a gay undertone, and maybe that's what he was going for, because he like literally could not talk about that at the time, or he'd get arrested.
It was definitely we rolled over a bunch of times and then fell asleep. I was like,
yeah,
rolled over,
but we've like completely left out the best part, which is when when Ishmael wakes up and Queequeg is spooning him and holding him.
Yeah. It was
so much.
It was so much. I feel like it was the right amount.
It was the best amount. Like, okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I immediately went there though. I think it's just like our culture now is like you have to be you want to be or you choose to be very accepting of that, or you are accepting of that. And so I think that was like it was easy for us to go there because we're surrounded by people of different sexual orientations all the time. Whereas like there may be someone who read that back when Melville first published, were like, all right, he was just cold. It's a really cold night. It's fine. Like was trying to like pretend as if that's not what he was speaking on, but I feel like I want to believe that he was.
So I want to point out that sharing a bed was not that uncommon. Like in boarding houses and inns and stuff, like that was not that uncommon. So like this,
okay,
it's not like that would be seen as out of the ordinary in context. But I do agree, like there's so much weird subtext that like definitely like it's like thus then in our heart's honeymoon lay I and Queequeg, a cozy loving pair. I'm like, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was.
Yeah, and like the whole like he thought they were married and like all that jazz. Like he's like calls him out like we're now married, and Mel was like, just so you know, that's not what he meant.
Yeah, he does definitely a lot of the classic Seinfeld, but not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting, and that goes forward because like once they get on the ship, not to lean too heavily on the shipping theme here, but like then they kind of aren't really together anymore because they kind of move apart and start moving like interacting with different people amongst the crew. Like I thought it was interesting that Queequeg and Dagu sort of become buddies. I guess you didn't get that far, Erica, but like Dagu is the other interesting guy who's this 6'5" African dude from somewhere in
I don't know
West Africa.
I was gonna say
said specifically.
Did they say specifically?
I want to say it was.
All I remember,
it doesn't
like,
matter.
Yeah, all I remember is saying like he's from the African coast and like he was just like wherever.
Well, if he's African coast, then it might have been indicating Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the sense that I got, like that French West Africa kind of thing.
I would agree. It's just like Ishmael regularly refers to where Dagu is from, and like that's how he phrases it is like the place that he is from, and it was like there's no actual name
that he is from.
Yeah.
And I loved the way that Dagu brought out like a totally different kind of like sense of humor from from Queequeg, because they would like go around together terrifying the white crew members by being like, oh, we're crazy savages, you never know what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And
so I wondered like how much Queequeg is meant to be playing that up, because it feels like a lot.
Yeah, because all of the harpooneers were not white, right? Yeah,
that's definitely another theme, which is that the officers are all white, and then the crew is sort of everyone else.
Yeah, but like the sub-officers who are the harpooneers, who have that like status place slightly above everyone else, but like below the mates, are all indigenous, are various types of indigenous people, basically.
Yeah, they have to do the dirty work. They're kind of the NCOs, but even really less than that.
Yeah.
From what I did get to read of Queequeg, I kind of want to be him. Like he's kind of badass and awesome. So I might have missed a few chapters depending on what does happen to him or could happen to him. And
that whole point where he's like, they're like, hey, you want to ship out with us? Are you any good? And he's just like, see that target?
I got this. And it was like,
he throws his harpoon.
Yeah. It's great. He's really badass. I really enjoy his attitude and like his presence. I feel like when Melville writes about him anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, he's got a lot of charisma. Even like when he he just gets up in the middle of in the morning and shaves himself with that harpoon. He's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm a badass. I got a harpoon shave.
Yeah. I thought so that's one of the reasons why once they got to the ship I kind of got bored, was that like it just becomes like Ishmael's kind of observations about stuff and less about the people.
Yeah.
And like the interesting parts at the beginning is like him and Queequeg hanging out and like doing stuff, and like that doesn't really happen after that. It becomes like very sparse, like several days later, like
Yeah,
stuff kind of happens.
He compresses time.
Yeah, and it's like,
but you're at sea for months doing the same thing. You know, you pull the sails in, you put the sails out. Pull the sails in, you put them out again. This is your day.
Yeah.
Although you do that on board the crazy nightmare ship that is the Pequod.
Yeah.
Whale teeth and bones.
I was really
hell.
So in kind of relation to what Erica was saying earlier, I felt like this could have easily been a fantasy realm. We're so far removed from like the sort of space in which this exists, where, you know, like he goes into a bar and it's got like the bar is in like the literal bar inside the inn is like inside a whale jaw that they just have in the place for some reason.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then there's like on the walls are all these like broken harpoons of like people's adventures and stuff like that. And I'm like, this could be like a ridiculously cool fantasy novel, like, you know what I mean? Like it's got a lot of those elements.
As soon as I read that part, I was like, I kind of want to draw that. Like I immediately went to like visually picturing what that could be, which is kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of really good imagery in this, like that bring up those stark pictures of like all the spooky whale skeletons.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff like that where it's just like he spends just the right amount of time getting you into this weirdly unfamiliar place of, you know, like this is what you know but not, with like the whaling industry and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, because it's a very insular kind of community, especially since they spend months at a time, or not months, but years at a time out at sea.
They have their own bars, they have their own churches.
Oh yeah, that church.
That church. With like the weird gangplank up into the pulpit and all that jazz. Like
it was a rope ladder. Down the side of a boat. And then the priest climbs up back.
He pulls it up after him.
Yeah, that was the like he's afraid someone's gonna come up after him.
I thought it was like I kind of agree with Ishmael, where it's just like it's kind of like it's like a weird self-isolationist thing for him to get into prayer mode.
Yeah,
and all his sermons are about whales and whaling.
Well, so that was particularly like portentous of the future, like how the like God and whales are one and the same, and it's the pursuit of a connection with that like fulfills your whole life.
Yeah. Because he tells the story of Jonah and the whale.
Right. Yeah, that whole chapter. Yeah. I remember I was like, I got to a point where I was like, all right, there's this guy on this boat. She's gonna tell Ishmael about the Jonah and the whale. All right, sounds good. I guess I got a refresher on my Bible. You know, like it's fine. Yeah. I feel like how he told it was much more intriguing than I feel like I would have read in the Bible, but not that I've read it. But
well, he tells it like very much like a seaman. And he,
right, very absolutely. That's what I would say.
And like he's lived a lot of this the shit that was like, you know. He's like, you know, I've been on boats, I've seen the water, I've seen whales, I know what this is like.
In a sense, wasn't that him puffing his chest though? You know what I mean? Like I've experienced the words of the Bible. You know what I mean? I feel like
I think so in a little bit, but I think it also gives him sort of a more conviction. Because he's using that as part of his faith of like, I have survived these things that the Bible has declared a trial, and that just makes me my faith stronger.
Right. Yeah, I can see that being both sides for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's very much like he's taking that metaphor of Job and getting like railing against God and then getting consumed by the whale and like all this stuff. Like that's like kind of the what is the word I'm looking for? The railing against the like injustice of the world, like trying to figure out why bad things happen to good people, and then just more bad stuff happens to you.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is kind of what he's trying to get a run away from by going to sea. Is he has some undisclosed terrible thing that's happened to him that's making him so depressed that he wants to put a pistol to his head, but instead he goes to sea to try and sort it out. So like it's not a yeah, exactly, railing against the machine, or raging, you might say, against the machine.
Yeah.
The one, I feel like the passage that I read that was like the most, the thing that provoked most thoughts for me was along the religion line was when they have Queequeg like doing Ramadan and fasting, and it was Queequeg, right? I didn't mix up the character. Okay, I was like, did I mix up characters? No. And they were like the line that literally made me laugh out loud, which made me feel terrible. It was like, no committing suicide or like hanging things on the wall or whatever, like that line that the Miss Missy or whatever her name was said, and I was like, oh my god, like
let's get a sign.
It's so like apparently that's equivalent. All right, sounds good.
It's an equal amount of mess that they've got to clean up.
Yeah, right. And then I was super intrigued, but one by that like dark humor there, but like also when he finally comes back from fasting, and then and Ishmael's just internally thinking about like, you know, I respect people of all religions, but until it hurts yourself, like that's when I'm going to tell you you're stupid and you need to stop doing this, you know? And he gives that spiel like, you're physically hurting yourself by fasting. You're not going to survive as a harpooner, whatever, giving him that spiel. And so I kind of was really intrigued at how like modernistic that felt to me. I don't know. By his thought process, he wasn't like shoving his Catholicism on him. I don't know.
It was these very secular kind of approach that.
Go ahead.
You didn't see in the 19th century a lot of the time.
Right. That's what it felt like. That's what I was super intrigued about.
Well, arguably speaking, Ishmael is like not racist and not really discriminatory, like really at all. I mean, he makes observations about like people being different from him, but he's like, I'm cool, whatever.
He's not assuming anything about them in a way that's hateful.
Yeah. Not at all.
Well, he even says, like, after he gets to know Queequeg, he's like, well, I'd rather have a sober cannibal in my bed than a drunk Christian.
Yeah, and I remember laughing at that line, and I was like, you know what? Real talk.
Yep, totally true.
Yeah.
The line was, no suicides permitted here and no smoking in the parlor.
Ah, that's what it was. I couldn't remember the line, and I was cracking up, though. I was like, I felt bad for laughing, but it was poignant. I don't know.
I feel like that kind of underscores how cheap these people's lives are. Like you might just die at any time, but also please don't smoke.
Right. And I think that's the juxtaposition that affected me, because I was like, all right, apparently suicide is just a common thing, you know. I don't know.
Don't worry about it.
You're a whaler, we expect it. Like.
Well, I mean, like the whole idea of sailors wanting to be on sea and being landbound is actually a big problem for them. Like a lot of people back in the day, during that time, where, you know, that was like the whole reason why there's all those depictions of sailors being drunk is because that they like literally that was the only way they would survive.
They kind of get like the opposite of cabin fever kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was gonna say in a lot of ways it can be. It can be compared to sort of astronauts nowadays, right?
Oh, okay.
Right, where they're kind of like, there's all this beauty and majesty and stuff that only they have experienced and no one else has experienced it, and they just want more.
They just want to get more, yeah, like a drug. I got you.
Maybe not that extreme, but like in a similar vein, right?
Head in a
well, I mean,
already troubled.
It's sort of correlation is not causation in this case. Like it kind of goes both ways a little bit. So and yeah, it was a pretty lucrative business. So a lot of people who either needed cash, not like quick in quotation marks, in as much as 3 years is quick, you know, would go there, whether that meant that they were in debt or they were a criminal who was trying to escape something, and they figured that maybe it would go away in 3 years and people would just forget.
Yeah.
But and a lot of those I was going to say a lot of those alleged crimes would not even be considered crimes now. Like you maybe owed someone money, and if you didn't pay him back, you were going to jail forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say that I'm pretty sure that you could sign up on a ship as a way of paying your debt when you got back. Like you could set up with your creditor.
Sort of.
Sort of, yeah.
It depends on where you are.
Yeah, okay.
Probably there, yeah, because they were relatively, like, very relatively advanced financially speaking.
Right.
You guys have way more cultural context than I do, apparently. I can't make observations. Brenda's like, that's exactly what is happening, or that's not what's happening. I didn't. I guess I didn't do as much research, but yeah.
I may know a little bit about 19th century history. Not as much American, but you know.
Yeah.
So I go maybe a little bit more. I think Brendan's just guessing.
That's what he's really good at that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Accurately
Or is
guessing.
it just bullshit?
Yeah, pretty much.
I can't tell. I don't know either. But you can't let on.
He's saying it with too much confidence.
Yeah.
Historian vampire. That's you. You're historian vampire.
Because I was there living in history.
Is that your Transylvanian accent?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can tell. Sounds really real.
So the one thing I did want to ask you about, Sam, and if you have any insight as well, Erica, definitely jump in, but it does happen a little bit after where you read to. But what do you think about Ahab? Because I kind of...
I think about...
Yeah, well, and this is probably, again, what we were talking about before with, like, the hype of, like, sort of that thunder and brimstone that we're talking about. Like, Ahab just seems kind of, like, quiet and boring to me.
Except when he screams at them about crack your oars and break your backs, men, when you see the white whale, which is pretty fucking intense.
Yeah, I wanted that scene to be more. I just had such a hard time understanding what the hell he was saying most of the time.
Yeah, that's a problem with this era of writing, and it was something that I thought was a little bit interesting because he breaks out of it. Is it's like super formal and super like metaphorical all the time.
Yeah.
Except when he's doing dialogue, and then it's like regular people talking.
Right, and like it's one of those things that I find it really weird that I find the formal like really easy to read, really understandable, like I like it, very approachable, nice flow, and then the dialogue is very real, and I retain so little of it.
Yeah, and that's what sets Ahab apart, though, is that he doesn't talk like a normal person. He is like a deity on the ship. He's a monarch, so he's like in Shakespeare. He practically speaks in verse.
Right.
Like he's doing his iambic pentameter.
Right.
Or I didn't count it, but I bet that he is.
I would say he would be, because there's a lot of references to Shakespeare's playwriting.
Yeah, well, they're kind of a big deal.
How scandalous of you to call Shakespeare a big deal. Oh.
Yeah, a little bit. I know my strong opinions.
Oh no. Did I drop out of video? Sorry.
Yeah, you did. That's fine.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, so exactly. So my opinion was that he kind of acts like a dictator, but more than that, he kind of acts just like a petulant child a lot of the time. Like he gets pissed off pretty easily. Mm. You know, like when I think it was Flask goes up to him, or Stubb, I can't remember which one, and tries to suggest something, and then like Ahab doesn't he literally kicks him in the ass.
Yeah, and
with his peg leg.
And there's a whole thing. He's like, at least you got kicked in the ass by the peg leg, because like that's ivory and it's really fancy, dude.
Exactly. So like, but then he'll
it's whale ivory,
time be wandering around on deck. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course, because not only has part of his ship been replaced by whalebone, but parts of his own body have been replaced by whalebone.
Yeah, that ship, man. It's so weird.
I love it. Also, the fact that it doesn't have a wheel, it just has a giant tiller, is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but
what is a tiller?
It's all mechanical. It's all this like really ridiculous mechanical setup, isn't it? That tiller.
Well, no, it's way simpler. A tiller is the more crude version. Like
right. But I'm just saying, like the weight of that tiller and the way they have it set up is like really intuitive, right? Like that's what Ishmael was saying.
Yeah, it's just a giant ass rudder.
Yeah.
But the fact that they then have the jawbone of the whale, and they're able to crank that under basically the entire mass of the ship to redirect it, says something to the, like, even a dead whale is more powerful than this entire ship.
Right.
I don't know. That's what I thought. But at the same time, like, that's Ahab, right? Is he wants to present that.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Higher than God, higher than this white whale. Uh-oh.
You're good.
We lost, I don't see, oh.
He's back. You just cut out for a sec there. Your video froze.
Okay.
My video's frozen for me inside of Google.
It's all this rain, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I do have a very plaintive look on there for that brief moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I thought Ahab was interesting. He's also very like creative with the ways that he goes about making up for his missing leg and stuff.
Yeah, the little holes in the deck so he can put his leg down.
Yeah, his leg, like, anchor points. Those are fantastic. Such a good idea.
Yeah.
And that's like, I feel like that's something that's so commonly referenced, like after the fact. Like, I feel like when I picture like a random cartoon, or like the Flying Dutchman in SpongeBob, or whatever, like random things where you see a captain with a peg leg that ends up sticking their foot in a hole in the plank. I feel like that's
like a
so
knot
funny
hole.
that it's like, yeah, a knot hole, exactly. And I feel like that's something that is so tiny, but the fact that they referenced it in Moby Dick, you know, they're like, well, it came from somewhere important, you know. But I feel like
I
it's
never even thought of that.
Yeah, but
I mean,
it perpetuated that long.
To be completely real, it's very possible that joke came from Moby Dick.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that it absolutely did. I feel like it absolutely did.
100% could have. There's so many really, really important authors who have drawn inspiration from this book and have stated how amazing it is, including, and I was reading this recently, Bob Dylan, in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, said Moby Dick was one of the 3 books that influenced him the most, and that the thematics of it are something that have entered his songs more than once.
Yeah, man. That's amazing. But, like, he's not the only one.
No, not by any means. And a lot of the, like, I was reading just on Wikipedia there, like, a lot of the people who were, like, really in love with this book are, like, really important writers that came afterwards, sort of thing. But this book was not popular when it was published. Melville was not popular as a writer at all.
Ooh, he didn't sell much of this until, like, almost a century after his death.
I believe he sold 3,000 copies during his lifetime.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that poor.
Yeah.
But yeah, he died broke.
Which is really interesting because, like, to me, as, like, someone who's somewhat published, selling 3,000 copies would be, like, the best thing ever for me.
Yeah.
But at the time, like,
Yeah.
on that scale, when there are only so many books being published, like, 3,000 is not a lot for them. For us, the print runs are smaller, but they're going to more directed audiences and whatever, right? So, it is what it is.
I mean, 3,000 is still not much in terms of, like, a mainstream book.
That's
It's basically nothing. You basically sold no books.
Yeah.
That's like a rounding error in terms of, like, bestsellers now.
That's fair.
Rounding error.
Rounding error.
No, but, like, legitimate, when you're selling millions of books, that's not 3,000. Like, don't even worry about it. And they were selling maybe not millions, but hundreds of thousands of books of a given run at that time. Like, printing presses were huge and steam powered, and they were churning stuff out on a mass production scale. So it's not like, you know, the 1840s, which is, I think, about when this was taking place. It's not like a totally, like, pen and paper society. They can still mass produce things.
Yeah. So just a couple of the quotes there. William Faulkner confessed he wished he had written it himself. And
Wow.
D.H. Lawrence called it one of the strangest and most wonderful books in the world and the greatest book of the sea ever written. And D.H. Lawrence is a pretty important American writer as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
Or sorry, English writer. He's an English writer, not an American writer. But yeah, so like this, yeah, it's one of those things of this book was not important until after it came out, which is really interesting because I feel like this Like when you read it, like it has immediate flow. And maybe that's just the way that we approach the classic novel nowadays compared to how they did at the time. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that approach has changed pretty dramatically. And to me, one of the smaller little details that signify that are like the chapter headings.
Right.
They're not really titles, right? They're headings. They describe the contents of this chapter.
Right. Yep. They do.
So like the one that we get up to is the whiteness of the whale, and it is literally only about how white this whale is.
Right.
Basically about white in general.
Yeah, white in general. That's what I felt. I felt like I was in the middle of color theory class.
There's the point where he's talking about the white whales of Lima and like a bunch. Like it's just about.
And I remember that one quote was like, the white is basically the absence of color, and was going on and on about the absence of color. I don't know.
Yeah, I wrote that down specifically as well because it was such a weird and specific call out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it didn't seem to fit with his blood and guts approach the rest of the time. Whiteness is definitely an important symbol.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't find this book earth-shattering as well. I do think like if they had had a better editor, this book would have been like the best thing ever. Because it shifts a little bit too dramatically, and I realized this when Eric was talking a little bit earlier. But the beginning of the book is like kind of a comedy in a lot of ways, and then when he gets on the ship, it becomes this like very mellow drama, like not melodrama, but like a mellow drama. Two separate words.
But it gets punctuated by those weird little moments, right? There's still comedy in there, like real, like human comedy.
Yeah.
Like one of the mates who smokes 7 or 8 pipes, like, and he just preloads them and like.
Yeah, he like wakes up with a pipe in his mouth. Like as soon as he gets up, instant pipe, and then he puts on his shirt.
Exactly. So it's not like there isn't. Not like that doesn't still extend through the rest of it, but you kind of get this weird zoomed out version of their sea voyage where he's academically describing it or like writing these essays about it.
Yeah.
And then also character stuff happens, but you don't really see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely found the last few chapters of this book, I didn't retain a whole lot of it. It was just I'm not gonna lie. I was listening to the audiobook. I got the audiobook off Audible.
So did I.
Yeah, I couldn't. I didn't even find a copy of it.
I think that's totally fine because for me specifically, I remember things that I hear more readily than that I read or see. So my comprehension level when I'm listening to an audiobook, and if I'm assisted by reading through my ebook or my physical book too, my comprehension level is shot right up. So I don't think one's
totally. But I'm a visual person. I definitely retain it a little bit better when I'm reading it. But the problem wasn't so much that, it's that when audiobooks get into a flow and you're into it, like I find that I can retain that very easily, which is what I can say about the beginning of the book. I remember all of it. Yeah. But like when we started getting into those long drawn out philosophical paragraphs, like I had such a hard time keeping up in my head of like, what's going on? Why is he talking about this specific thing? Like that whole whiteness thing, honestly, all I remember is he was talking about white. Like, legit. Yeah. That's all I got.
I think that's okay.
Honestly, that's kind of all you need. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, I think he just said a very small thing in many words, and that was like the gist. I think that's okay though, right? I mean,
yeah. But I think the audiobook is also part of the why I have such a hard time retaining the dialogue. Because the audiobook guy is really good and he says them like they should be pronounced, and like I don't always get it, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I have kind of the opposite opinion. Like I feel like I can understand something, like even if it's using a weird diction, if it's spoken, because you can hear in context and like where the emphasis lies and stuff like that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. Especially when I was so Brendan had sent me a link on SoundCloud where they had a different actor read every single chapter, and I remember the first chapter. I had read the first Tilda Swinton, yeah. I read the first chapter without the audiobook on my Kindle, and I remember thinking that I was like, my eyes were closing because I was trying to like stay awake for a second, and then I feel like I was losing losing the storytelling ability of that chapter, and then I listened to her read it as well as read it at the same time, and I went, okay, now I understand why there's such power to what Ishmael is talking about. I don't know. I think that it's so much easier for me to, sometimes I can't hear that in my head, you know, and I think that's what it gave a lot more power.
Yeah,
and passion.
I tried to read that version and I couldn't.
Yeah, it was very jarring switching from audio person to person.
It wasn't even that. I just felt like it wasn't edited very well. So like there was lots of gaps between sentences, and like it kind of threw off the flow for me. So I didn't like it, which is why I got a real audiobook. But I agree with you. Like
and there's a.
Sorry, go ahead, Zen.
I said there's a couple different versions, even on Audible, and they vary in length pretty substantially.
Right.
Yeah. I did not get the $2 one. Though I was very tempted because of the price, but yeah,
No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, this is kind of part of the debate that we've been having over the last few episodes, right? Of, you know, audio book versus regular book, and the differences between them, and how we retain them, and how we approach them. I think the audiobook gave me a much better idea of what timeline I was expecting in order to finish it. The nice thing about Audible is you actually have that little speed up thing, so I listened to a little bit or a portion of it at like 1.3 times.
Yeah, I was as well.
So it was like a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
Okay, I wondered how you got through that fast.
It was pretty quick. I did about 5 hours.
I tend to do the same. I tend to do the same with most books. It wasn't even like a rush thing for me. Like I have what was I reading? I'm reading Go Set a Watchman on Audible right now, which is the Harper Lee sequel.
It's actually it's actually the first draft.
Sorry?
It's the first draft of To Kill a Mockingbird.
What?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound true.
No, it's not. It talks about Scout as a 26-year-old woman.
Yep, that was the original draft.
What? Oh, I didn't know that.
And then she changed it for the To Kill a Mockingbird. And then it was the publisher presented it as a sequel, but it really wasn't. It was actually an unpublished first draft.
Oh, wow. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Either way.
It was kind of a whole thing where people were all pissed about the weird advertising on it.
Right. Well, the thing is like it's a southern story. You have Reese Witherspoon is the reader on the book because she loves Alabama. and she speaks a lot slower because I think that's where it's meant to be, but my brain was like, all right, get to the end of the sentence kind of thing. I listened to a lot of audiobooks on like 1.3, 1.5.
Yeah,
I don't know how you can pull that off. It just that high-pitched voice kills me every time. Yeah.
So the thing that I've talked about with Sam a lot, but in general, I love like graphic audio. They're an audiobook company that does like weird abridged versions of books, but they're like semi-abridged because they abridge like certain things because they do sound effects and they have voice actors for every single role and like music and that kind of stuff, and it's really, really cool. So they abridge certain things like this, like he heard this, and they just play that sound effect, but it's very much it's very close to the actual text. And I love what they do, and that kind of thing, that idea of audio drama is very, very appealing to me. And I think that this book has a very large sense of that to me, of like that sort of idea of audio drama, at least at the beginning. It was very reminiscent to me of like old Sherlock Holmes adaptations and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like that sort of, we're in a boarding house and it's very Victorian society-ish sort of thing, and
more radio play-y. Than later in the book.
Exactly, and then when you get later in the book, it becomes very drawn out, and that's sort of where it lost me, of when it stopped being that sort of almost radio play like, and became much more dense. Yeah,
it becomes more like him trying to educate people on particular aspects of sailing.
Yeah.
Rather than being anything about characters, which is too bad because the characters are really the most interesting part. They're really the only part of this book, and the rest is just him kind of going out on his tangents.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that I ended up only having enough time to get to the point where the character development is ending. And then you guys are just like, yeah,
No,
it's dry after that. And now I'm like,
read the best part.
Right, I read the best part, and that was the gist. No, but now I'm like, I'm intrigued if I'm gonna feel if I'll feel the same way after I catch up, and you know, get through the second, third.
Yeah. So I mean, that may be a bit of a problem because apparently the second, third, or like the middle part of the book is kind of like all like this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna
And
be
then-
on the board.
It's gonna be it's
and
gonna
then
be a bit of a truck for the second part.
Yeah, and then the third part is like the real crazy like guy with a harpoon against a lightning background kind of scenarios.
I'm excited for
I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Doing it for narcissism. What?
Yeah. Except I enjoyed it as soon as I started reading it, and then it wasn't
so
that anymore. It was
surprised.
more like, yeah, what's Ishmael gonna do next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whose bet is he gonna share?
Whose bet is he gonna share?
Is it Flask? Might be Flask.
Might be Flask. I just wanted to point out that the vast majority of Herman Melville's other books did not seem particularly of note to me, though he did write Bartleby the Scrivener.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like
That masterpiece.
well, it's an important story, I think, and it inspired a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the software. The name of the software I use today, Scrivener and all that stuff, is from how big.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it was. I swear.
No, it's because a scrivener is literally a person who writes stuff.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, they specifically mentioned that story on their website.
That's baloney.
I'm just saying.
That's crazy.
Any chance he gets to promote Scrivener? That's where we're at.
I mean, Scrivener's good. I use Scrivener, but like it doesn't make sense that it's reference to that, which is a reference to the literal job. I don't know. Whatever. Sure. Could be. Can't prove it. Tide goes in, tide goes out.
Tie goes in, tie goes out, yeah.
Can't explain that. Yeah, so what else? So what have we not talked about? Oh. No, that was something we already talked about. Oh yeah, so like a more structural thing I thought was neat, that like kind of as the lead into the more middle part was the chunk of chapters that were like little biographies of each of the characters on the ship, or like each of the crew members. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Although it could have been a little better, it could have been a little more natural, but at the same time, it was neat for him to kind of showcase each of them specifically with their own little scene.
Yeah, and I think the way he did it was very reminiscent of contemporary writing. Like I feel like when I look at other stuff from that time period, it was very similar to that, where it's like, oh yeah, so this character like. So this is this person, and this is what they're like, and this is why they are, and this is like a thing from their past, and blah blah. Blah. So I think that is very reminiscent.
Yeah, it was natural, but at the same time, it was kind of like he just plonked it in there, like fully formed, and then would kind of continue with the story afterwards.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that kind of what his writing is like? I mean, we have that whole
for sure
that chapter on cetology and all that stuff, which is literally like. I remember it's like Ahab was coming this way, so they stopped talking, and I was like, it was ready for the next chapter to begin with Ahab coming to have a conversation with them, and then it was just like, and the nature of whales, and I was like, what? Wait, you just like what? Where was the narrative flow? I legitimately thought that I had fallen asleep and missed a chapter.
Nope.
I was like, wait, what?
That would have been expected.
Well, it's just like it had a good flow, and then it just like cuts off and goes into that chapter, right? So I think that sort of idea is very reminiscent in the way that he bounces around as a writer.
Yeah, it was in character. It was just like compared to modern books, it was really weird.
Yeah, that's fair. That being said, I don't feel like if we compare this to something that's maybe similar in vein of like say the motorcycle can't even. I'm legitimately blocked out.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle.
My trauma has blocked that book from my brain.
Zen.
So, like, if we compare that, like this is not that dissimilar to that book in terms of its kind of content. They're both.
I can see why you'd say that.
They're both travelogues in a sense. They're both ruminating on philosophical ideas. They are in love with lists.
Hey, that is true. Yeah, man, do they love lists?
That is true.
It's some mucho truo right there.
And they both have excellent writing prose.
I would counter that by saying that I think that Zen actually did a better job of having those things naturally flow back and forth between the two kind of time periods, whereas this just abruptly smash cuts you directly into a whale essay and then straight back into like harpooning a guy or whatever. Like there's no transition whatsoever.
Agreed on that part, but I think that I don't feel so weird about the transitions in this book in the same sense, because like even with the smash cut, like when he says that entire chapter, and that entire chapter is self-contained and works as an idea, and I understand the ideas he's presenting them and why he's presenting them, which is not the true of Zen, where you're like, why is he talking about this?
Do you feel like that's because you're as equally tangential as Herman Melville? Where you just go off on random subjects for roughly 30 minutes and then you're like, all right, back to what we're talking about.
No.
Some deep cuts.
No.
Deep cuts.
Did you hear him go, no? Like very, very quietly. What are you talking about?
I don't do that. My stream isn't like 90% that.
My stream is definitely 90% that, but I don't personally feel like that makes it more interesting to me as a reader, per se. Though, to be honest, I'm not bothered by it all that much. Except for that one smash cut was really, I was like, what is going on? But everything else I'm mostly cool with. So
yeah, so I don't know, like it's got a lot of, it has a lot of weirdness, but it's kind of consistent in it, at least.
Consistent weirdness, that's all I ask for.
Yeah, I mean that should be the name of this stream, really.
Oh, Sam. Okay, yeah.
I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
This is the island of misfit toys. You can like it or not.
I mean, isn't that kind of what the ship is? The island of misfit toys?
It actually totally is all these people who've been rejected or pushed out by society and forced out to sea. And that's like a non-trivial metaphor.
I feel like I got the impression, you can completely contradict me here because obviously I missed 19 odd chapters, but it feels like Ishmael doesn't feel that way though, that he chose to be a sailor, that it's not about him being rejected or
he feels
quick at feeling rejected. It's more, it was their choice, you know, maybe it's the truth that they were rejected, but it's internally, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I for sure feel like Ishmael, like that's his passion, is he needs to keep going out to sea or he's not going to be okay.
I kind of question why he's not a full-time sailor, to be honest. Because I haven't quite got the feel for what he does when he's on land and why he has these extended bursts on land. I do think the large contrast he draws between the merchant marine and the whaling crews, and the way that those boats are and the way that those crews are and what they do and how different they are was very, very intriguing, because I wouldn't have thought that.
I think I have a question that maybe you guys can answer, because I feel like I didn't comprehend it as well as I wished. There was some comment about, well, he has, I don't know who they were referencing, but it was like, well, he has a wife.
Oh, Ahab.
And that, yeah, that's what it was. It was Ahab. And they were saying that, I don't know, something about him having a wife.
And a kid.
Right. Was like, showed that he was, I don't know, more dedicated as a sailor. I can't remember exactly what they were saying.
I think the idea is that he's not crazy because he has a wife and kid.
Oh,
and he's
right. Yeah.
normal.
Because they were curious as to why they hadn't seen him. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a human being too, and he
Right.
goes ashore and he sees his family once every couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
So like some of his madness is maybe you can attribute to him being kind of isolated and away from those, yeah, the few experiences of normality. So, yeah, I don't know. Ahab's a complicated character, right? And so he keeps trying to add like depth to him, but at the same time adding this weird like froth of madness on the top.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the one thing that's kind of preventing me from really understanding Ahab is that Melville, and I know this is on purpose. For sure, it's on purpose because there's no other way, considering how good at characterization he's been. Is that Ahab is presented with this weird veil of he's like, you know, that Melville knows why Ahab is the way he is and all that jazz, and like Ishmael kinda is close to knowing, or maybe knows in the future, like in the narration version of him, but not in the past version of him. So there's like this weird, like almost enforced layer of mysticism given to Ahab, and I know that that's on purpose, but it feels a little bit too manufactured for me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the Colonel Kurtz. Yeah, a little bit of that, but yeah, Ahab. Yeah, he's got that mythos around him, so the characters kind of react to him in these prescribed ways.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it's just like I was listening to that scene of Ahab and Starbuck, where Starbuck's like, "We're not here for your revenge, bro. We got money to make," and like I just like I didn't quite feel the impact I thought that scene should have, and a lot of that had to do with that weird, like, I'm not sure if Ahab's really crazy or if he's just weird, or like I'm not sure yet, you know. And I know that Ishmael's telling me he is, and people are telling me things about it, and it like, but I don't see it yet. And when I see it, I'll probably understand, but I don't see it yet.
Well, I feel like the only moment we've had that really shows him kind of flying off the going beyond flying off the handle is when he gives his speech and like roars at the crew and kind of pulls them into his madness.
Yeah, well, it's almost like a religious experience, right? Where he's like dipping their blades and like getting them all hyped up, and
it's almost like when they're in the church and the preacher goes up to his pulpit and pulls the ladder up. You know, like Ahab is up on the deck and he is pulling his metaphorical ladder up and telling these guys that they're gonna go kill this one particular whale that pissed him off earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone drinks the Kool-Aid pretty fast in that scene.
Yeah, they did. Which is again one of those moments of like I didn't quite get the impact in the way that I wanted to, but
yeah, it was hard to feel convinced by the kind of vague description of his speech that was punctuated by little things, but wasn't especially compelling.
That's exactly what I mean. Like I felt like there was the seed of something really good, and I just didn't see it all. But the guys on the ship did, and so they totally drank the Kool-Aid. But like I'm like, I don't know, is the Kool-Aid good? Like, you know what I mean? Like I kind of want to drink the Kool-Aid, but I'm not sure yet.
The taste of the Kool-Aid doesn't matter. Who's selling you the Kool-Aid is what matters.
Right?
Oh, for sure. And like Ahab seems like he's a pretty good salesman when he wants to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
he's an experienced captain, right? Like this is not nearly his first mission. Probably not even his like 20th mission.
Is the Kool-Aid good though? Yeah. Yeah, no, he's very experienced. He's got a million scars.
Well, he's old, right? So, like he's the same age as the other two guys who own the ship.
Yeah, Peleg and Bildad.
Yeah,
Bildad, yeah.
Or of similar age.
Yeah. Did you guys want to talk about that? I'm gonna come back in just a real quick second.
It's all you, Brendan.
All right.
All right, hold on. Give me a second.
Okay. So for me, like So Ahab is very, very much a graybeard. He's been around a long time. I kind of picture him in his 60s or 70s, with his peg leg and one of those things. And like, keep in mind that in that day and age, if you were a sailor, even in your 60s and 70s, you were basically working out 6 hours a day every day. So like, you know, you're lifting things and doing all that. So you're probably buff. You're pretty good shape. If you weren't in good shape, you were probably dead. You know, like malnutrition, all that jazz. So he's been around. He's survived a lot of things. Like, it's not every day that someone gets their leg bitten off by a whale, and survives in that day and age. Like, that's just not a thing that's that common.
Right.
Sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not quite sold on Ahab yet, and I know I keep repeating that, but it's close.
It wasn't. You haven't said that many times. This is the problem, is that I would love to comment, but I literally got to the part where it was the end of the 21st chapter is literally, and we have yet to hear from Ahab, who's down in whatever his room is, whatever. It was something along those lines. So I don't have any comments on Ahab yet, but
yeah, I thought so. That whole thing was interesting, right? Like, why he was in his cabin for so long, and when he actually decided to come out.
Yeah, he's got to like psych himself up to come and deal with the crew.
Yeah.
But I thought what you said there was kind of interesting, in as much as he, like, each of these crew members, even the captains, have worked their ways up from being like a deckhand, more or less. Maybe not everyone, but most of them.
I would say the vast majority of them. It wasn't really a society where you could buy your way into being an officer. In certain aspects of the Navy, yes, but not in these ones. In like the British Navy, for sure. Yeah. Like, that was a thing that was the norm. But like, this is not a Navy. This is a business venture, and so they need to be egalitarian and like meritocratic. Yeah.
So paying people based on how good they are.
And I was gonna say, the owners are literally like 40, 50-year seamen, and like have been doing it since they were a kid, and sort of thing, and like they know who's good and who's not, to an extent, you know. So they're only gonna hire people
There's
they
no
think
way.
are good.
Like, you can talk as much shit about them just being rich and like staying on shore when these boats are going out and taking the risk, but they have done it. Like, they've gone and risked their lives in turn. And they've put their time in.
Well, that's how they got rich, right? They got rich literally by being good whalers, so that they could afford to buy their own boat.
Right. Yeah, I remember them talking about who was it? Was it Bildad? They were talking about one of them was like, and he retired. Oh, it was Bildad. Yeah, they were like, he retired at the goodly age of 60, and is just using his revenue to like continue the rest of his like short rest of his life. So that was kind of intriguing. I feel like I didn't think that they were as rich as
they are. Very rich.
Yeah.
We're talking like they own more than one ship, probably
which is huge.
A small fleet. So I think he said like a ship's cost around $20 million at the time.
With inflation?
Well, like with everything, like with all the supplies and like everything loaded up, they were like worth $20 million.
That seems way too high.
I feel like that maybe because
that's like
inflation.
In the hundreds of billions. Maybe with our, like, maybe in modern day currency I can see 20 million, but that anyway. Yeah. They're worth a lot of cash.
Right. Okay.
Like, regardless of what the absolute value is.
Oh, sorry. That's all of the ships, the whaling ships in the world. Were worth 20 million.
Yeah, okay. That makes way more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I remember they were saying, he said like there are like a large handful of people that own like the amount of like 2 nails on the entire ship or something of that sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of neat because they're a joint stock company that is like, which would have been something not totally common at the time.
Right, and then he uses that analogy.
Today,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
But like now that's the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was like, well, I mean, in a certain sense, or at least time period appropriate, Sailing Voyage has always been kind of a joint stock company in that way, right? Of that sort of like, you're working for your share.
No.
Was that not
true?
true?
No, usually not. most of the time you would be press ganged and you didn't get paid. You lived on the boat because they owned you.
Okay, fair enough.
Even commercial ships. Like that's very common in North America, and it was almost always the norm, mainly because like a huge component of especially the eastern United States, like the northeastern New England kind of area, was founded and colonized by joint stock companies, like colony corporations. So that had to be the standard because that's all they knew. Like that's how it all worked. But if you go and look at like in Europe or further west, like or east, I mean, it would be a few nobles who would wholly fund an entire thing, and they'd own that ship, and they'd hire a crew of like independent sailors, maybe. But yeah, it was generally more like indentured servitude, and maybe you got paid at the end, maybe you didn't. It was not normally a investment opportunity.
Right. So I did a quick calculation there, and I think each ship would have been worth around $30,000, like 20.
That sounds about right.
Something.
In 1851.
In 1851.
Yeah. That's a huge amount of money. That's like more money by 1,000 times than most people would see in their entire life.
Yeah, and so they owned more than one ship. So they were very profitable at what they did. In fact, I mean, it went on to say that like New Bedford and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod and all that were like super wealthy areas because everyone was like a rich whaler, basically.
Well, think of them as like the United Arab Emirates of that time period.
Yeah.
Like literally most of the oil was coming from there.
Right.
The whale oil.
Yep.
Yeah, the equivalent of $30,000 in 1851 to the present day would be $925,000. So
yeah, like $1 million each.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, yeah, sure. Yeah, that seems a little low, but like still that's pretty good. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So and they bring back like 7 million, like those 700 ships bring back like $70,000 worth of goods every year and whatever else, right? So
yeah. Oh yeah, and they were they're making money hand over fist because they can more or less set the price for this oil that only they can get and only their particular skill set can get.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like skill territory rather than literal territory.
Yep.
So I don't know if we had any like final thoughts. Anything else throw out there?
I like the reference to Vancouver, the explorer.
Yeah.
Who the city is named after.
Yeah, because they were talking about exploring the Pacific. That's right.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of that.
Yep. I just like there's a lot of references to Canada, which seems like a weird thing to say, but like that's not very common at the time. And it's kind of nice to be acknowledged. Well, they talk about Newfoundland and they talk about like lots of stuff. Like
there were important ports. Like, you know, it's not like Canada didn't exist. It was just really tiny, especially inland. Like the coastal areas were equivalent-ish to the United States, but inland there was no one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any final thoughts. I definitely am excited to like see if I feel similarly about the density that you guys experienced in the chapters leading up to 42, but I don't know. I'm glad that I'm not bored on my mind yet. Because you get to a point where you're like, all right, this book was published at this time. I'm gonna assume that it's as dull as I could possibly imagine it to be, which is really shitty. And like, I feel bad that that's the way I feel, but that's the way I feel, you know. So
Dickens has set a precedent for that, though.
Yeah, and that's my problem is that I as soon as I think that era, I push to Dickens, and that's where I'm like, that's why I feel like that's why I prevented myself from reading more from that era. Like I have the desire to, go read Austen. I have the desire to go read, Bronte, whatever. But man. I just like, Brendan's got thoughts on Austen and Bronte.
I like Bronte.
Bronte opinions.
Austen is super boring though. Anyway.
Okay. I believe it.
There's only so many times I can hear about what the proper etiquette to a dance is.
Bronte facts.
But I agree with what Horseman was saying. I was definitely thinking of piracy when I was talking about the idea of share of spoils sort of thing, because that was a big part of that. That's 100% what I was thinking of.
That's totally something that we didn't mention, and that I want that actually to be my final thought, which is that there's this despoiling of this particular resource, this like almost piracy of the natural world that goes on, that isn't really discussed openly, but like I at least feel like it's kind of this underlying theme where he keeps talking about how majestic these whales are, and then they like core them out like melons.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm nervous about that part. I don't want to read about coring melons.
We haven't gotten to that part yet. But I know that it's supposed to be an important part of this book is how he describes the actual process.
The act
it's disgusting.
Gutting whale.
But it's just been like implied a little bit so far. You just hear people kind of mention it, like they drain this fluid off. So I mean that's something I'm anticipating a little bit. Is
right.
Thanks, History Museum for actually telling me that entire process in advance, so I'm prepared.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's nasty.
It is nasty.
I mean, if you want to see like a visual reference for what that kind of looks like, the movie In the Heart of the Sea, which is about the sort of real story that inspired this book, does a good job of showing how foul that is, of hauling that fluid out of the whales.
Yeah.
Time for me to go vegetarian. Anyway.
Yeah. Really? Yeah, so I guess I want, like, after that being our final thoughts, just a real quick thing. What did we think? Did each of us like it? I kind of liked it.
I like this book. In general, I think it's pretty good. And I'm excited to read more, to be honest. I think there's going to be lots of moments that will be good to pull us through those weird philosophical musings or whatever we want to call them.
I didn't expect to laugh as much as I did.
It was pretty funny.
A small little, like this, like absolutely the bed scene with Ishmael and Queequeg and the, like I mentioned earlier, the suicide and smoking the parlor thing. I felt like just like little nuggets, and I was like, you know what? Good for you, man. I'm all about this. So I'm hoping that there's more nuggets like that because I feel like that's what's going to keep me interested.
We totally ship Quishmail.
We ship Quishmail for sure.
Separately yet identically. Yeah, so Quishmail. That's the episode title, I think.
Yep. Definitely. So yeah.
Did you have something more?
No, I think we'll just do recommendations and then close out the stream.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know about you, Erica. Do you have anything like a project to someone you know that you think is cool, or something you've read or watched or whatever that you wanted to shout out?
Oh man, I forgot this is a thing.
Okay, you can go last. It's cool.
Okay,
I'll
go last. Yeah.
How about you, Sam?
I know for sure. I saw Blade Runner 2049 recently. That's like my pop culture thing. It's unbelievable. Everyone should watch it.
It is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, it's the best movie I've seen, like maybe ever, but it's certainly at least in the last 10 years.
I would agree. I think it might be the best movie I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of good movies.
Yeah, so real good.
Yeah.
I gotta see it a bunch more times.
Yeah, we should go. We should go soon.
Yeah, whenever.
Yeah. Actually, funny story about me going to see Blade Runner. We went, me and Mike Hahn went, and Mike Hahn's a friend of ours from work. And the projector didn't work, so we got a free movie plus a voucher. So I literally got paid to see Blade Runner in a free movie voucher. So, yeah.
And
you saw it? Well, no. Did you see it in 3D or
I saw it in 3D because it literally. Okay, so we were only going to see it in IMAX regular, like not 3D. But that was the projector that didn't work, so we ended up seeing it in 3D for free.
So my question about that, and I don't want you to say literally anything about the plot or anything that could possibly be construed as a spoiler because that would ruin the movie. But like, did you feel like the 3D actually added anything to it?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's kind of what I
Does it ever? Let's be real.
I will say
No,
that
it's not.
I really want to see it in not 3D because I always feel like the colors are better in not 3D.
The color is incredible. I could gush about literally every component of that movie.
So I feel like I need to see it in IMAX regular so that I can get that color aspect perfect. And then we're
I heard a horrifying story about an IMAX version in I don't remember what, it's some U.S. city. Someone went to see it, and in those theaters they have an IMAX logo that lights up along the sides of the screen, like before and after the film.
Okay.
But someone in the production, or in the not the production studio, the projection studio, turned the lights on about 10 seconds before the end of the very final scene.
Oh,
so it was
God.
like, this is the end. Don't worry, any tension that might have been built up and uncertainty is just gone. You know, it sounded like the most brutal destruction. Anyway,
Right.
it made me upset. The ending of that movie is super good.
Yeah.
All right, I got my thing. All right, my recommendation: the Law and Order True Crime series that just came out, the Menendez murders. It's currently airing. I think they just had like the 6th episode. I love crime stuff, and it's about true story from the late 80s. It's super good. I would absolutely recommend it to anybody, especially if you're a Law and Order buff. It's great.
Sounds good.
And our friend, mine and Brendan's friend Shmandrew, did some art for them in Variety magazine, so that's cool too.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So my recommendation, 100% go see Blade Runner, but I'm really looking forward to seeing Stranger Things 2 this week. I had to get the book reading out of the way so I would have time to do that.
To binge, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing that this week, but definitely go see Blade Runner.
I've seen the first 2 episodes of the new Stranger Things. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you will not be disappointed.
Good.
I've heard that, so I'm excited to check it out. Check out the 2nd season.
Yeah. So I think on that note, I'm just going to wrap us up here. Our next episode is going to be on the 20th of November, so in 3 weeks, as long as schedule's permitting.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So that should, but we can be pretty flexible with that if we want.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And we're going to be reading up to the end of chapter 87, which is the Great Armada. So that's another like 7-ish hours in if you're listening to the audiobook, or at least the version that I'm reading. So probably about 7-8 hours, depending on which one you're listening to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was 22 hours and something, so it's going to be pretty close to 7 point something.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the version that I was listening, or very close anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you, Erica, for reading along with us so far.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. First female, what up? I'm an asshole, it's fine. Okay.
And cut.
And cut.
Yeah, so tune in, guys, and thank you everyone in chat for showing up. It's awesome. Come again next time, and of course, keep watching Brendan's stream every Saturday Sunday at 12 Eastern Standard Time for his weekly writing web show. And Erica, do you have any call-outs for your streaming time schedule, whatever?
Yeah. I do Monday, Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, or Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern. Yeah. That.
Awesome.
My username's right there in chat. I shouted myself out like the whore that I am.
That's intense. I love it. Yeah, so on that note, that is it for tonight.
Thanks for coming out, guys.